Welcome to this talk on meditations on higher consciousness, an introduction to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and an introduction to the meditations that will follow on disc number 2. I would highly recommend that you listen to this introductory talk at least once or twice before going on to the meditations so that you can really understand the essence of them, the depth of where they're leading you. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a classic yogic text about 2,000 years old that was written by the supposed sage Patanjali. Without going into detail on who Patanjali is or if he even existed or any other historical information on the text, let's simply understand what it is and what it's leading us to. It's as if somebody handed us a map and said, if you follow this, you'll experience a wonderful treasure. And you say, yes, but I need to know whose map it is and where it comes from and who is the author. Were there many authors or one author? And the wise being just says, let's go on the journey. The journey from the Yoga Sutras is into peace. It's into the freedom from suffering. It's into a state where the mind becomes clear, the emotions become clear, the body becomes as healthy as it can be because the mind isn't causing any psychosomatic illness. It simply leads us back to our true self. The Yoga Sutras can be considered the science of the soul, in the sense that they help us to do an experiment that can lead us back to who we are. You can call it a science because in the scientific method, you have a hypothesis, you have some idea of some experiment you'd like to do to see if you can get a certain result. If you can get that result, then it has to be repeated by others so that it can be proven to be true. The hypothesis here is that you can know peace. You can be happy. More than that, you can live in a state of absolute oneness with your higher self, with God, with the unchanging essence of the universe. If you do the experiment as found in the Yoga Sutras, you will get the same result that anyone else did who's done this before. It's relatively simple, although it can take years to fully grasp what the sage Patanjali was leading us to. To understand the Yoga Sutras, we need to understand a few key terms. The first terms to understand are Purush and Prakriti. Purush refers to who we really are. It refers to the subject in a subject-object relationship. So if I say I am seeing a pen, I am not the pen. I am the Purush, the one who's observing the pen. Prakriti would be the pen. Purush refers to the consciousness. Prakriti refers to the object of consciousness. Purush can be considered an unchanging field of pure awareness, where Prakriti is the energy that's manifesting into all the forms within time and space. Purush is pure existence, pure consciousness, and pure bliss. It is pure, it is free, it is forever. It is the I Am presence that we all are. It is one ocean of love, of peace, of bliss. It's what the Yoga Sutras are leading us back to. Prakriti is the energy that underlies all that we see, and it's the energy that manifests into all that we see. Mool Prakriti, referring to the root energy of all creation, is an infinite sea of light, and this light manifests into all the forms and energies of this world. Purush observes Prakriti, which is to say that you, the observer, are observing the world. The Yoga Sutras make this very important distinction because what the sutras go into is explaining a misidentification that happens where you, the observer, start to think you are the observed. Instead of knowing yourself as the immortal, the eternal, blissful soul, you start to believe you're the limited, finite, and temporary body, mind, or emotions. There's a misidentification that happens where the subject believes itself to be the object. It's almost as if you were driving in your car and forgot who you were and thought you were your car. Then if the car got scratched, you'd be terrified because you thought you got scratched. If the car got into an accident, you'd be devastated because you got into an accident. The beautiful thing about knowing you're not your car is that you can get out of the car. Purush observes Prakriti, just as you observe your car. Now, of course, you take care of your car, but fortunately, it's not you. This is similar to if you're watching a movie, and the movie is very enthralling, and next thing you know, you feel like you're in it. You forgot you were in the movie theater, and you were all the way up on the screen. Then, next thing you know, you wake up and you realize, oh, I was just sitting in the movie theater. Thank God I wasn't in that. Or it's like having a bad dream at night. The consciousness that you are is very caught up in the dream. And when you wake up in the morning, you realize, wow, I'm glad that wasn't reality. The essence of the Yoga Sutras does say you're living in a dream. You're living in a misidentification of who you are, thinking you are this human being. The human being is Prakriti. The body is made of the energy of the universe. The sensations in the body are Prakriti. All of the feelings, whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, are in the realm of Prakriti. All of the emotions, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, are Prakriti. And even your thoughts, your mind, what the Yoga Sutras call chit vrittis, are just fluctuations of this field of Prakriti, this one field of energy. Purush is none of this. It's the observer of this. Yet if you were to ask someone who hadn't walked deeply through this path, who are they? You will get some answer based on something in the field of Prakriti. It's almost like saying somebody who drives a Chevrolet, who are you? And they go, oh, well, I'm a Corvette. You say, is that who you are, or is that just your car? And they say, nope, it's who I am. Somebody who knows better would see how much ignorance is in that statement. This leads to what's called the klesh. In yogic philosophy in the Yoga Sutras, the klesh refer to that which causes suffering. The first klesh is called avidya, or avidya klesh. Avidya is two basic words, vidya, meaning knowledge or knowing, and referring to not or no. So here avidya means not knowing, or ignorance. Ignorance of who we truly are. It's as if somebody were a great king, and all of a sudden one day he woke up in a poor home and started calling himself a peasant. Even though he was a king, he didn't necessarily realize his greatness. This is avidya, it's ignorance of who he truly is. It doesn't say in avidya klesh what we're ignorant of. It just says we don't know who we truly are in this state. We don't know that we're Purush, the soul, the spirit. Very theistically speaking, it says we don't know we are that perfect, whole, and complete child of God. We actually believe ourselves to be the human being, and we believe the human being is the child of God. The human being is a vehicle. It's a body. It's the temple of the spirit. It is Prakriti, but it is not the spirit itself. In truth, there's only this one spirit. However, yogic philosophy helps us to discern what's changing and fleeting and temporary from what is eternal, absolute, and forever unchanging. Once we know that, we come to discover that that one reality is all there is. In the Yoga Sutras, it's called Yog Darshan, or the vision of oneness. In avidya, we don't know this. We only see separate changing forms. We only see people, places, and things, and we think we're part of this. In this, we feel very separate from everything around us. The next klesh is asmita, It's when we really believe we are the human. Asmita means I sense. Avidya says I don't know who I am. And asmita says I've identified with my human form, my human emotions, my human mind. If you listen to the wording there, you would say my body, my emotions, my mind. Yet in asmita klesh, this subject-to-object relationship has never been discerned or thought out. You simply believe you are what you're observing, like saying I am my car, or I am that dream, or I am that movie. Avidya says I don't know who I am, and asmita says I've identified my I sense with what I'm observing, pretty much just the human being. In this, there's a lot of suffering, of course, because the human being is a changing, limited, temporary form. Eventually it's going to die, and it's going to go through periods of ups and downs, times when it feels good, times when it feels bad. The ignorant soul who's caught up in the body falls into the next klesh, which is called rag, or rag klesh. Rag means clinging or attachment. It's a holding on to things when we're not really feeling what we truly want to feel, which is the peace and bliss of our true self. Thinking we're the human being, identified with the human form, we hold on to the people, places, things, careers that make us feel good. And we hold on to the emotions and thoughts that we think make us feel good. So we hold on to the happy feelings. We hold on to opinions, views, hopes, dreams, and preferences that made us feel good in the past. Rag is a tremendous form of suffering because everything in the field of prakrti, which is what we're holding on to, is changing. Everything is constantly in motion in the field of prakrti. Nothing ever stays the same. But because we are the soul, and we want something eternal and absolute and unchanging, we try to make the temporary eternal. We try to take this field of constantly moving energy and keep it in one place. It requires constant effort, and in this state of ignorance, we find ourselves tremendously suffering, holding on to that which will never stay the same. We also know that in this state, where we're totally identified with the body and clinging to everything that would make us feel good, not knowing who we really are, that we fall into the fourth klesh called dvesh, or dvesh klesh. Dvesh means aversion or a pushing away. If rag is holding on to things, dvesh is trying to keep them away. I hold on to what makes me feel good, and I push away that which makes me feel bad. Because I'm the body, mind, and emotions in the state of identification with them, I feel that I can't be okay unless the body, mind, and emotions is okay. I need to be sure all the external circumstances stay in a certain way to be sure that the human being, which I think I am, stays okay. The fifth klesh is avinyavesh klesh. It's literally translated as the fear of death. On a simple level, it says, I'm the human being. I know part of me says I should exist forever. I don't want to not exist forever, and you as the soul, as Purush does. But when you identify with the human, you become terrified of dying. Most people deny this at first and say they're not afraid of death. Yet underneath almost everything we do is this need for survival, thinking that our body, which is us, can die, and that we're not eternal, and therefore we need to do everything we can to try to keep ourselves going. Avinyavesh is deeper than this, though. It's not just the fear of physical death, it's fear of letting go of everything we've been holding on to. Our I sense, our opinions, our preferences, our belief systems, the emotions, the grudges. It's as if somebody said, you could just let it all go right now. The consciousness, the I sense, becomes terrified of this. It's the fear of dying, of letting go of who you think you are. However, there comes a time in our life, in our evolution, in our growth, where we've realized this isn't working. Avidya klesh, not knowing who I am, becomes more and more apparent. Asmita klesh becomes more apparent where we've identified with this human form which is changing and thinking there's got to be something more. Rag klesh, holding on and clinging to everything that makes us feel good, gets very tiring. Dvesh klesh, pushing things away that scare us or that don't make us feel good, becomes exhausting. And avinyavesh, this constant fear that lives with us of not getting to feel good all the time or ceasing to exist at all, becomes very scary. Eventually you want to wake up. Now, there's something very interesting that happens here. Prakriti, the energy of the universe, is in the service of Purush, the consciousness itself. Another way to say this, more Western, would be the creation is here for the creator. That God, the soul, is here to participate in the experience of this world. The world is here for the soul, not the other way around. Prakriti, the energy of this world, is in the service of Purush. When Purush is investing itself in this world, putting itself into career and finances and family and health and all the things that human beings do, Prakriti is there for it for that reason. And that's perfectly fine. Prakriti is always doing something. But when the consciousness gets to a point, when you get to the point where you say, there's got to be something more than this, then Prakriti starts to change the way it's working. Life actually starts to assist you, because it is here for you, to help you to wake up again. When the consciousness is putting itself deeper and deeper into avidya or ignorance, Prakriti caters to that. When the soul says, I've had enough, I've suffered enough, I know there's more to who I am, I don't know who I am, I'm ready to wake up, then Prakriti begins to work in that way. The voice you're hearing now, the vibrations you're hearing now, are Prakriti. The fact that they're vibrating in your ears is because you, the consciousness, have made the choice to let these type of teachings into your life. Prakriti, the energy that's vibrating into you right now, is in the service of you. And if you choose to keep letting it bring you back closer and closer to your true self, then it becomes beneficial. This leads to two other words that come from the Yoga Sutras, klisht and aklisht. Klisht refers to thoughts that cause suffering, or that which is causing pain, but very much to your thoughts. Aklisht, the a meaning not or no, refers to thoughts that are not causing suffering. When thoughts are always based in the world on changing forms, when the consciousness is externally oriented through the mind, and all it can do is think about the field of Prakriti, never knowing its source, then there's going to be suffering. Thoughts that are aklisht are thoughts that lead you back deeper and deeper into yourself. These type of thoughts you're hearing now are aklisht. They're referring to a way to be free of suffering. Therefore, one of the most important things in this path is to have the intention to start to know what to do, to be free of suffering, to want to know who we truly are again, to discern what's real and what's not real, what's illusion and what's truth. The moment we have this intention, the whole field of Prakriti shifts gears and helps us to get back home. Two other key words in the Yoga Sutras are Sanyog and Viyog. Sanyog refers to a state that's mixed or misidentified. It's when Purush believes itself to be Prakriti, or the subject believes itself to be the object. Or bringing it closer to home, it's when you think you are your body, your mind, or your emotions. Sanyog is when the pure consciousness that you are is totally immersed in the human. The state of Viyog is where we're pulling out of that, extracting the consciousness from the human. It's when the soul is learning to transcend body, mind, and emotions. It's not a form of escapism. It's not a denial of the world. It's the ability to observe the world without being caught up in it, just like the person in the movie theater can observe what's happening in the screen without suffering because of what's happening on the screen, or someone who's dreaming who can watch the dream and consciously realize, wow, thank God this is just a dream. It's sitting up on a bridge, watching the water pass by underneath, knowing, thank God I'm not drowning in the water. It's a state of absolute peace and solidity within the soul that never changes once the consciousness is brought there. So instead of having thoughts that are cliched, which lead us into this world identified with the world, into the state of san-yog, where we're totally mixed up and caught up in the humanness, we learn to turn our consciousness inwards, back to Purush, back to the soul, back to the self. The outward motion, the outward-oriented consciousness, falls into what's called Vyutan Vritti. Vritti refers to thoughts or the fluctuations of your mind, the chitta, where all of those movements there in your head are directed outwards. The consciousness literally going through the mind and through the sense organs is always identified with the changing field of Prakriti. The other movement is called Nirod Vritti. The process of Nirod is to bring the consciousness back into itself. This leads us to the second sutra of the Yoga Sutras. After the first sutra, Atha Yoganusasanam, where the sage Patanjali introduces, now an exposition on yoga is to begin, then he goes on to the second sutra, saying, Yogash Chitti Vritti Nirodha. Yoga, in the state of yog, is a state of oneness with Purush. It's a state of absolute unity with who you truly are. However, the word unity implies that there's something to be united with something else. The true realization of the state of yog is that oneness has always existed. It's called Yog Darshan, or the vision of oneness. It's something that we remember or wake up to again. It's not something that we establish. It's not a state of union. It's a state of oneness. It's a state where we know we're absolutely, and always have been, one with the truth, one with the absolute. You might say, one with God. Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha refers to the state when the fluctuations of your mind, when all of those thoughts have settled down, when they become quiet. The word Nirod, therefore, has often been translated as restriction or suppression, saying that the state of oneness with God occurs when the fluctuations of your mind have been suppressed. This is a very poor interpretation of this word, and has led many people to believe that meditation is about stopping your mind. Meditation is about merging into who you truly are. It's about when your mind simply ceases to keep telling you that you are other than what you are. It is a state where the mind has become exceptionally quiet to the point of not existing. However, it's not done through control. It's like a person who's been drowning in a pond. Water is splashing everywhere, waves are all over, dirt is being stirred up from the bottom, and the pond isn't clear. And the person can't see their own reflection to see who they truly are, because they're drowning in a very unclear field. The concept of Nirod Vritti is to turn the attention back into the self. This is synonymous to simply climbing out of the pond and observing it. The best way to get all those waves and dirt to settle down is simply to sit up on the banks of the water and to watch, to look down at the waves of the pond or the river and just let them go. However, instead of bringing the attention to the pond at all, the yogi learns to bring their attention to the one who's observing the pond. Because what's more important, Prakriti, the pond, or Purush, the one observing the pond? Most people are so caught up with the pond, they've never taken the time to ask who is the knower of the pond. Nirod Vritti, the state where all the fluctuations of mind have settled down, is when the consciousness learns to bring its attention back into itself. This begins with a process or a faculty that's inherent within the consciousness called vivek-khyati. This can be translated as discriminating wisdom, or the ability to discern the real from the unreal, what's changing from what's eternally there, what's observed from the observer, the knower from the known, illusion and truth. Vivek-khyati is the ability that the consciousness, through mind, has to be able to say, what is this and what is that? For instance, if you were to observe a chair and a desk, you have the ability to know what is the chair, what is the desk. You also have the ability, although it's seldom used by humanity, to say, who is the knower and what's the known? I can observe the chair and I can observe the desk, but who is the I who is observing both chair and desk? Vivek-khyati helps us to make this clear distinction, and it traces us back into the seat of our soul, into the self. Without this, we'd be totally caught up in the world. We would only know we're this human being, and here's this body, and here are these thoughts, and here's this mind, and here's all the objects of consciousness, and this is all there is. Fortunately, that isn't all there is. If that's all there really was, this changing field of form, there can never be true eternal peace. Because there is the knower, the observer, the witness of all of this. The Yoga Sutras help us to become reestablished in that, to move back into that. And fortunately, there is a path back home. All we have to do is simply begin to discern Purush from Prakriti. Help our thoughts to become aklisht, where they begin to lead us back into the soul, rather than klisht, thoughts that lead away from the soul. To move from the state of sanyog, where we're caught up and mixed up in our humanness, to a state of viyog, where we're deeply one with our true self. From the state of utan vritti, where all the consciousness is going out into the world, to the state of narod vritti, where the consciousness has merged back into itself, and all the fluctuations of the mind have settled down on their own. It leads us out of the klesh, out of suffering, out of misidentification, out of ignorance, out of having to fight with the world to push it away or to hold on to it. It leads us totally out of fear and back into the truth of who we are. So as you go on to the next CD, you go through 4 different meditations. The first one is a meditation on vivek-khyati, or discernment, the ability to distinguish the real from the unreal, the ability to know what is prakriti and what is Purush. Remember, Purush is the unchanging self that you are, and it is pure peace. Remember, Prakriti is that which is changing. It consists of this world, every vibration and sound and movement in this world, anything in time and space. It includes your body, sensations in your body, your emotions and your mind. It includes your memories and even the ego sense of I. The ability to discern who you are from what you're not is extremely important. It deals with a term called netsi, meaning not this and not that. So the yogis ask, who am I? Am I this chair? Netsi. No, I'm not this chair. Am I these shoes? No, I'm not these shoes. Am I this body? No, I'm not the body. And so on. You do this until there's nothing left. When you've realized that I'm not anything I'm observing, you come to rest in the one who's observing. In that you experience what's called Sat, Chit, Anand, pure existence, pure consciousness, and pure bliss. It's everything we've ever looked for, and it's who we are. We just need to know where to look. The second meditation is a meditation based on the term samadhi. Samadhi is the state of yoga. It's the state of oneness with Purush. There are stages of samadhi, and it would help to understand these now before going into that meditation. The practice of samadhi is very deep, and it's a very accomplished state of meditation. However, to understand it right from the beginning is very important. And once we learn to put our attention back on Purush, on the highest consciousness, after we've engaged the process of discernment to know what is Purush, what is our true self, then we can simply keep bringing our attention back there again and again. We don't have to go through all the stages of samadhi to get to the highest stage. Once we know that we're the self, all we have to do is keep putting our attention again and again back to the self. The stages of samadhi work by going from the most dense levels of reality to the most subtle, until you're all the way back into the self, the most subtle of all. The first meditation, discernment, helps you to go from the most dense, discerning gradually back until you can't get any more subtle because you are in who you truly are. Samadhi deals with two other very important words, dharana and dhyan. Dharana means concentration. It's the ability of the consciousness to hold its attention on one object or upon itself, more importantly. And dhyan is a state of meditation where a merging begins to occur with what you're concentrating on. Dharana can simply be best termed as holding your attention upon something. In the Yoga Sutras, there's what's called Ashtanga Yoga, which refers to the 8 limbs of the path to oneness with who you truly are. In these, the 5th limb is called pratyahara, which means sense withdrawal. It's the pulling the consciousness away from the objects of consciousness and inwards. As the consciousness is being moved inwards, it practices dharana, or concentration on the more subtle objects that are inside. For instance, instead of putting your attention on desks and chairs or candles or pictures, you begin to pull your consciousness inward and start to focus directly upon inner thoughts or concepts or images until you've gone so subtle that you're all the way back into the self. So pratyahara is a sense of withdrawing our consciousness from the world, not to be mistaken for withdrawing from the world to live in a cave. It's simply a practice that we do, perhaps morning and evening. As we've closed our eyes and we're sitting still, we begin to move our attention back inwards, using concentration or dharana, holding our attention on that which we want to hold our attention on. For instance, let's say we started with a candle flame. We would put all of our attention on the candle flame. This is dharana. You keep doing this over and over again, and you'll experience dhyan, or a merging with the candle flame, until there aren't as many thoughts about it, and there's just you, the Purush, the consciousness, observing the candle flame. Eventually, the state of samadhi begins to be experienced, where subject and object are not two separate realities, because the mind has ceased to arise in its old way. The knower and the known become totally one. The first basic level of this is called Vitarka Sampragat Samadhi. It's where the consciousness is being able to be perfectly held upon an external, formed, physical object of consciousness. It takes a lot of time and practice. However, the beauty is you can bypass all of these stages and go right into the self. It is, however, very important to understand these stages so that you know where it's all really leading you. After having focused on a candle for a long enough period of time in the state of Vitarka Sampragat Samadhi, you would feel inclined to close your eyes and to begin to focus on the next level of samadhi called Vichar Sampragat Samadhi. It's where you are observing the inner idea of the candle. Or what you might find if you practice this is the candle actually gets burned into the retina in a sense. So when you close your eyes, you still see a subtle inner light there. It's nothing mystical or magical, it's just how your eyes work. However, when you close your eyes and observe that more subtle image of the candle, you're actually going from the external to the internal, from the more dense to the more subtle. Instead of being caught up in the physical, you're moving more into the mental, the emotional, or even to the realm of pure ideas. As you start to focus on the inner idea of the candle, or that inner image in your mind, which eventually fades, and then you have to go to that idea of the candle, you're practicing Vichar Sampragat Samadhi. Sampragat means subject-object. There's still a sense of a you observing an it. However, you practice this. You keep bringing your attention, which is called dharana, again and again to that object. You meditate on it. You merge into it in the state of dhyan. And samadhi, in this sense, vichar samadhi, is when you and the inner idea have become totally one, no more separation. Here, when you are meditating on the external idea of the candle, and then start to go inwards to the subtle idea, pratyahara is happening, where you're withdrawing your senses from the outside world to the inner world. Enough attention held on some inner object, whether it's the idea of a candle, or the picture of a saint, the idea of a saint, a mantra, a certain phrase repeated over and over again, a certain song. When there's enough dharana, dhyan, and samadhi, which is the term sanyam, an intense concentrated power that's been placed upon some object of consciousness, when that's held long enough, a very profound state of bliss starts to develop. This leads to the next state of samadhi called Anand Sampragat Samadhi, or a subject-object sense of I am observing bliss, yet am exceptionally one with that bliss. This isn't the absolute bliss of Purush. It's actually what's known as the bliss of the ahankar, or the bliss of ego. Not to say that that's a bad thing. It's a very important stage to go through. However, when the consciousness is becoming more and more subtle and has a sense of, here I am, and I'm just observing an inner state of wonderful peace and bliss, it's a very high state of meditation, even though it is still called sampragat, subject-object. The yogi is learning to discern from the more dense levels to the more subtle, and now you're at the very subtle level of I am experiencing bliss. Doing this enough, when samadhi starts to develop on this level, you actually experience I am this bliss. The deeper you go into this, eventually the subject-object sense of I am observing bliss starts to fade, and what starts to develop is the next state of samadhi called asmita sampragat samadhi. Asmita, as you remember, is one of the klesh, yet it's not a word that's necessarily a cause of suffering. It's not a negative thing. Asmita simply means am sense, or I-ness. When it's asmita klesh, the I-ness is misidentified with an object of consciousness. The yogi has learned to consciously bring the attention back to the soul. Now, asmita samadhi is where you are meditating on the amness itself. It's still sampragat, meaning subject and object, because it's a feeling of I am meditating on my own consciousness. This is where vivekyati, or the power of the soul to discriminate the real from the unreal, is really coming in, because now the soul is able to observe itself. There's an amazing power of the soul where it's able to discern who and what it really is. Now the meditator learns to hold all of their attention on this. Eventually, enough practice of this, and keep in mind this takes years, moves you into what's called asampragat samadhi. Asampragat, according to the sage Patanjali, simply refers to not subject-object. The sage can't say exactly what it is, because it totally transcends all description. Asampragat samadhi is simply when the consciousness has completely merged into itself in the non-dual state of absolute oneness with its source. This is the highest state of yoga. It's a state of yoga darshan, or the vision of oneness. It's a state of what's called kevalya avastha, or perfect enlightened awareness, and practiced enough, the yogi lives at every moment in the kevalya state, knowing that you are that state. that you are yoga. All of the practices, the practice of samadhi, comes to help you to realize that yoga is samadhi. The state of absolute oneness is your true being. You are samadhi. You are Purush. The beauty of this is when you merge so deeply into your true self that there's no debating it. There's no saying, wow, I must be something other than pure peace and bliss. You come to know you are that, and you are that at every single moment. Meditation number 3 leads into what's called Sham Dhyan, or the ability to bypass all of these stages, fortunately, and to simply put your attention on the consciousness itself, to go there again and again. Sham refers to the blue-black space of pure consciousness. Sham is a name for Krishna when Krishna is considered very dark. Krishna means the dark one, and Krishna as Sham is a blue-blackness. However, going beyond just gods and goddesses, Krishna is Purush. Krishna is God. Krishna is the essence of all that is. Krishna is Sham. It's all the same oneness. It's all the same consciousness with many different names. So Sham is the blue-black space found within your forehead. To meditate on these highest levels of samadhi, instead of having to focus on the physical and then the idea and the bliss, we simply go right to the self itself. Meditation number 3 on the other disc will help to lead you into that state where you can simply bring your attention to the soul directly. In this, pratyahara is happening, where you're withdrawing your consciousness from the external world. Dharana, or putting your attention on something, is happening because you'll be putting your attention directly upon the soul. Dhyan begins to happen as you meditate and merge more and more into your true self. And the state of samadhi occurs as you know you are that. Remember, these aren't necessarily linear stages. When you practice Sham Dhyan, or space meditation, Sham meaning that inner space, Dhyan referring to meditating on that space, you come to realize that the 8 limbs of Patanjali Yoga Darshan and the later limbs we're talking about, numbers 5 through 8, aren't a linear process. They're like limbs that grow off of a tree or limbs that grow off of a body. They all occur simultaneously. If you see them as stages, the stages of samadhi you have to walk through, or the stages of Ashtanga Yoga that you have to go through, then it seems like it takes forever and you'll never get there. The truth is you're there now, and all you have to do is bring your attention back there. So if this entire talk seemed extremely deep and beyond your grasp, and you could never make it through these stages, the beautiful thing is it's as simple as possible and anyone can do it. So right now, if you're listening, if you're not operating a moving vehicle, just close your eyes. Bring your attention to that space in your forehead. And with your eyes closed, and your attention on that blue-black space within, become aware that you are aware. You're simply bringing your attention to the I Am presence. All you have to do is bring your attention there. You don't have to stop your mind. You don't have to go through any stages. The moment you go there, you are engaging everything about the Yoga Sutras. Every word in Sanskrit, every complex practice is totally bypassed, and what the great sages and saints teach is all you have to do is go there. The mind will try to make it complex. The pundits, the teachers, the scholars will try to study it and disprove it and debate it. Yet all you have to do is bring your attention to that blue-black space in your forehead. And meditation number 3 on the next disc will certainly help you to experience what that's like. Meditation number 4 leads us a little bit outside of the Yoga Sutras and deals with an experience that was had in the Bhagavad Gita by the warrior sage Arjuna. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna was a great warrior, and he fell into a dilemma of not wanting to fight this war. So he turns to Krishna, who happened to be the chariot driver of Krishna's chariot, and says, I don't want to fight this battle. Krishna goes on to give one of the most profound discourses in world scripture that's ever come about. After teaching Arjuna some of the greatest teachings of how to be free and how to live a life where one isn't attached to the outcome of actions, where a person can just be rooted deeply in the self and still live their life. After all of this, or somewhere almost past the middle, chapter 11, Arjuna says to Krishna, I want to know you as you really are. I see you talking to me here, you look like anyone else, but I want to know you as you really are. Krishna says, very, very rare is it for someone to come to know me as I really am. But because I see you're worthy of this, because I see you as a friend, because you are sincere, I will give you a divine eye so you can come to know me as I really am. With that, Krishna grants Arjuna the vision called Virat Swarup, or the vision of the eternal absolute form of the divine. This is pretty profound, and after seeing it, Arjuna was absolutely terrified and asked us to see Krishna again in his normal self. It's terrifying because being caught up in the body for so long, and then all of a sudden having a vision of the whole, which includes all of Purusha, all of Prakriti, the absolute source and all of its creations, which is an experience that the advanced yogi absolutely can achieve, becomes very terrifying to the uninitiated. However, meditating on this cosmic form, not just the very essence, but the whole, the all that exists, is very helpful in knowing peace. It's important, and it's shared in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's experience that anyone with enough diligence can have. It's important because it helps us to see things in their proper perspective. It helps you to know, I am the soul observing the universe, and there's no reason to take it so seriously. The meditation I'll lead you through in the next disc in track 4 in Cosmic Consciousness helps you to be able to put things into the proper perspective so that you could observe this entire universe right from where you are, and to know you are free. Not that while you're having the human experience you'll be seeing planets and suns and moons and black holes. However, in the state of Virat Swarup, you can have that experience. The beautiful thing here is that your mind can be cosmically conscious. You can be open to that awareness right now. So while you might not be able to see Pluto and Neptune and Jupiter and all of these planets and all of these galaxies, you know they exist. Meditating on the vision of cosmic consciousness helps you to know you are simply the observer of universe. You happen to be observing the tiniest piece of time and space right now through the human form, through the 5 senses. But this doesn't change the fact that you live in a universe that science will tell you is about 15 billion years old, that contains billions and billions of suns, billions and billions of galaxies, and it's going to go on for billions and billions more years. When we get so caught up in the humanness, when we're in the state of sanyog, mixed in with the body, the consciousness becomes very myopic. It becomes very focused on the smallest details. The yogi's consciousness over time begins to expand, to be able to become aware of being cosmically conscious. It helps you never to take anything too seriously. Of course, you can still function on the level of humanness, and it's very beautiful. A lot of people would say to the yogis, why don't you just come back down to earth and you're so out there? The yogi is very functional on this plane, is very functional on this earth. Cosmic consciousness includes this body and this earth. The yogi says, that's beautiful, I'm happy to enjoy being with you on this plane of reality. But are you also aware that you're spinning around a big sun on this little blue ball called Earth? Are you aware you're in the solar system now? Are you aware you're in the Milky Way galaxy? Are you aware of the billions of stars in this galaxy and the billions and billions of galaxies, each with billions and billions of stars? Are you aware of this while you're brushing your teeth? Are you aware of this while driving down the street? Are you aware of this when a confrontation begins to develop with another human being? Cosmic consciousness is a state that you might say is the next level of evolution of humanity. Instead of just being conscious the way an animal is, or self-conscious the way most people are, the soul is becoming more and more cosmically conscious in humanity now. It's the ability for us to be always aware of the bigger picture. Meditating on this and knowing you are the observer of all that is a very profound way to be in peace. So I leave you with all of these wonderful, very deep concepts and highly encourage you to study them more in the Yoga Sutras or with a teacher who can lead you through the text. And I highly encourage you to use the meditations on the other disc and to practice them in the order that they're given, and ideally to engage your own practice morning and evening for about 5 minutes here and there, a couple minutes throughout the day, to bring your attention into that space in your forehead, to constantly bring your attention back to Purush. So use the meditations as a guide to help you to grasp the underlying meaning of the Yoga Sutras, and to use the meditations to really help to embody these teachings, to experiencing them directly beyond just the intellect. And as you're starting to experience what this is really all about, to practice on your own, morning and evening, 5-10 minutes, and then throughout the day whenever you remember. Remember, this isn't hard, it's extremely easy, and it's not a complex philosophy, although, like I alluded to in the beginning of this talk, you can make it extremely complex. It's extremely simple. Just bring your attention to the pure consciousness that you are, and in this, the yogis tell us, there's all freedom from suffering, from suffering, from suffering, from suffering.